Marvel apparently lost money at the box office, and I know that's not much news for people out there paying attention, but normally Disney tries to obfuscate the actual box office earnings in order to make it seem like their movies are performing a lot better than what they actually are. But now, thanks to some new financial reports, it shows that out of the three releases in 2023 for the MCU, which were Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and the Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the only one that actually made any money at the box office, but the losses for the other two were so severe, it actually wiped out the earnings that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had, and things are in the negative for them. But one of the interesting things about this, since they're actually officially acknowledging that those other two movies were failures for them, I know everyone knew the Marvels was a failure, but Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, there was people out there defending that and saying that that did earn money at the box office, but since that's officially a failure, we can see how that reflects on some of the other MCU releases, especially the ones post Endgame. But first, let's look at this article from the Direct that's talking a little bit more about it. A new report confirmed what many expected. Two flops by Marvel Studios in 2023 lost money for the company. Gone are the days of everything Kevin Feige touching turning to gold. I would argue that Kevin Feige wasn't the reason a lot of the MCU movies were good. It was, he had a part in it, sure, but you got to keep in mind in the best days of the MCU, which were phase 1 and 2, Ike Perlmutter was also the president of Marvel Studios. So once he left Marvel Studios, or once he stopped having control over things, then you saw them really take a negative downward turn. So I would say he probably had more of a hand in making the MCU what it was back in its glory days. The MCU has been a mixed bag of fan reactions and audience reception since 2021. Phases 4 and 5 offered high points like Spider-Man No Way Home, but also lows like The Eternal, Secret Invasion, Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. I like how they're saying, yeah, there's been high points like this one movie, then there's been some low points, and then you start listing off a bunch of movies. Unfortunately, this negative word of mouth and ill will among some fans has caught up with the once untouchable Marvel Studios. A recent Bloomberg report confirmed with two Marvel Studios films in 2023 lost money, The Marvels and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. While the Marvel's theatrical run was the most catastrophic in studio history, Quantumania got 2023 off to a surprisingly bumpy start. Ant-Man 3 earned $476 million on a reported $200 million budget, but beyond the financial information, it broke some of the trust of diehard MCU fans. And it's this reported global take which led a lot of people to think that Ant-Man 3 made money at the box office, because they say, like, well, it made $476 million on a $200 million budget, so that means it made money, right? And I'm not talking about the people who think the budget is the only expense. So if it makes more than $200 million, that means it made its money back. No, because most people understand that theaters get their own cut too, and it's a roughly 50% cut. So that's why they say the movie needs to make double its production budget in order to break even. But then you might be looking at this and saying, like, well, it made over $400 million. So does that mean it made money at the box office? Well, these financial statements are saying it didn't, and the reason for that is because a lot of people neglect to take into account the marketing costs for movies, because that's not factored into the production budget of it. And kind of as another rule of thumb, we don't know for sure what they spent on the marketing, but it's pretty common for Disney and Marvel to spend around 50% of the production budget on the marketing costs for this. So that means instead of having to double $200 million in order to break even, they have to double $300 million, which means this movie needed to make $600 million at the global box office in order to just break even. And it wasn't able to do that. And you also have to take into account studios aren't going to want to spend this much money producing a movie just to break even. So there's usually like a factor where it's like, okay, $600 million would be, they broke even, but they won't consider it successful unless they made, like, let's say $750 million or something like that. But once I see that Ant-Man 3 was officially a failure for them, I couldn't help but think, what about some of the other movies within the MCU, especially post Endgame? So I got to the numbers, and it has the list of all the MCU movies that's come out since then. It's kind of nice having them in order. So you can see the three movies that they're talking about: the Marvels, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and these two were failures. This one was barely a success, but I'm kind of going by the model that we used for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So you have to add 50% to this. So that'd be, like I said, $300 million. So it needed to make $600 million. It was less than that. All right, let's look at Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So you add, 125 to that. then multiply that by 2. So that needed to make around $750 million in order to break even. Okay, Wakanda Forever was a success for them. Love and Thunder, another 750. Yeah, they were successful, but just kind of barely successful, about 10 million, but still it made money back. This one, yep, Doctor Strange, easy success for them. Spider-Man, yep, another easy one. Eternals, yeah, this probably needed, you can see this was less than what that if you factor in the marketing costs. Shang-Chi, 150, so add what is it, 225 to that, multiply that, so 450. This was lower. Black Widow lower. Spider-Man was good. So these are the post-Endgame results for that. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, and let's just say 4, 5, 6. So out of the 11 movies that they had released post Endgame, 6 of them were the ones who actually made money. And even then, one of them is kind of an iffy one on there. And if you also think about it, the other successful ones, Far From Home, No Way Home, those were successful movies, but they're not going to be doing Spider-Man movies anymore. They're not going to do a Thor movie anymore. They're not doing a Guardians of the Galaxy movie anymore. So out of the 6 movies that were successful, 4 of them are characters that are pretty much gone at this point. Did I mention Love and Thunder? Because I think Thor's gone from there. Yeah, I did. So the only ones that they can actually continue on with are Black Panther and Doctor Strange. So things aren't necessarily looking good for them moving forward, but this isn't really news to a lot of people. Most people understand that the MCU hasn't been what it used to be, and that's why people are saying, like, kind of pointing this out now. And I think Marvel is feeling comfortable more or less admitting this, because in order to fix your mistakes, you have to admit that you have mistakes to begin with. And I think a lot more people, or at least their idea is, if they admit their mistakes and acknowledge that there's been problems with the MCU in recent years, then maybe they can move forward with that and people would start to trust them again. But I still have my doubts about that. There has been indicators that they're trying to make changes in order to fix the mistakes that they've had made in the last couple of years, like rewriting a bunch of stuff. Supposedly, even their shows like Daredevil Born Again was so bad, they basically scrapped half of it and started over. There's brought in new writers for upcoming Captain America movie, or the Captain Falcon movie, whatever they're calling it, and trying to basically redo that movie. They're slashing the budget on Blade. I like this articles I was seeing this last week where they're saying, like, oh yeah, Blade's just going back to the basics. He's just killing vampires. It's like, well, yeah, that's really all we wanted. We don't need to have any more. But they're saying, like, oh yeah, they're just cutting it down, so it's just Blade killing vampires. Like, fine, just do that. Just give us what we're supposed to have. And supposedly that has a really low budget to it. So I think they're less inclined to take risks moving forward, and they're going to try to go back to giving people what they want. It's just a matter of whether Kevin Feige at the helm is able to give audiences what they want. And I personally have my doubts about it, because like I said before, I don't think he was the one who really made the MCU great. I think he was a contributor to it. I'm not going to dismiss that, but I don't think he's capable of doing this on his own. And that's why I don't really have faith in the MCU moving forward. Now, this article that I was initially talking about from the directors going into Deadpool and Wolverine, like, will that be profitable for them? Because that's their only movie that they have coming out this year. And I think that movie will actually be good, but that doesn't mean the MCU is kind of back on track, anything like that. I think what happens in this day of superhero fatigue, or whatever they're calling it right now, or bad movie fatigue, I think that essentially just means people aren't going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So if a movie is good, has good word of mouth, and it looks good, then people will come out to support it. But until then, people aren't just going to habitually watch something for the next Marvel movie, because the past they were watching it because it was setting up for the next thing. And now people don't necessarily care about what's being set up for the next thing. I think people just kind of want to go back to having standalone comic book movies. And I think Marvel should kind of look to embrace that. You can have your cameos and crossovers and other things like that, but your movies can't just be built around setting up for the next thing, because that's not working anymore. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And don't forget to click the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to like and share the video, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.